Hello, WiCCD members. My name is Maya Shukeri, and I am WiCCD's Education Committee Director. I'm happy to introduce our series, Finding Your Niche. In this series, we will interview female criminal defense lawyers who practice in a specific area within criminal law. The goal of our series is to highlight the work and accomplishments of female criminal defense lawyers, but it is also a way for us to introduce you to specialty areas within criminal law. We hope we can help you find your niche. Enjoy the series.
Keli, how are you?
I'm super. How are you today?
Well, I'm very happy to see you. As we were chatting before we started recording, you're one of the first lawyers I met when I started my career. So I'm very, very happy to be interviewing you today. And I'm happy that, people who I know a lot of people know who you are, but those who don't will get to know more about you.
Well, thank you. I still remember our first meeting at a Criminal Lawyers Association fall conference. And we sat together and we befriended each other, and we've stayed in touch ever since. And so, goodness gracious, that's got to be what, 8 or 9 years now? Is that correct?
Something like that. Yeah,
Wow.
8, I think. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Wow. It just seems like not that long ago.
I know, and I didn't know anyone back then, just a few people, and you were always very nice with me, and you encouraged me actually to get involved with the CLA. You were the one who was pushing me and telling me you should do some,
I
join the
remember
women's
that.
committee, and you were on
And
the
look,
women's committee.
yes, and look at you now. You're running the show everywhere. It's very
Well,
exciting to see that. It's very exciting.
inspired by you, right? Like
Well,
you
thank
really
you.
were very
Thank
supportive.
you very
But
much.
Keli, today
All
it's
right.
all about you. I want to focus on
Okay.
you now, and well, you're very known. You're especially based in the London area, London, Ontario. But
Yes.
I would like you to tell us about your firm, more about what it is, what type of law you practice in, if you have a niche, and we'll start from there.
Sure. So I live in London and I have a very large number of London clients. However, my office is actually in a small town just outside of London called St. Thomas. The reason it's there is because after articles, I got a job in St. Thomas, which is very close. It's like a 25-minute drive from my house. And I started doing family law because I thought that's what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to do family based on my own experiences. So I was very, very young when I had children, 18 and 20. I wasn't married, but they have the same father. And so after the birth of my second child, I went through a very, very litigious and acrimonious custody and access battle, even though I didn't ever live with my children's dad. So, anyways, that was very challenging for me because I was going to university and I had two children on my own. But had always planned to be a lawyer. And so I thought that I wanted to do family law because of my own personal experiences. So, anyways, I was given the opportunity for a job in St. Thomas, which was close to where I lived in London, and it was mostly family. And I thought, "Yay, this is what I want. I'm off." So I was working for another individual, and he also did a lot of criminal law, although that wasn't what the position was advertised for. So I started doing a bit of criminal work, and I just realized how much I loved it. I found the family law was so paper intensive, which I had anticipated, lots of drafting of affidavits, reading affidavits, filing motions, all the time filing motions, and so very acrimonious. With the criminal, although it's acrimonious to some extent, it's not the same as in family law. So, anyways, I started doing more and more criminal work for this sole practitioner I was working for in St. Thomas, and I realized how much I really enjoyed it. And I seem to have a real knack for it. My strength in terms of my skills as a lawyer, I think, is my ability to think on my feet in a courtroom. So, in other words, to respond to things, to know how to redirect if the questions or the answers to questions aren't going the way you might think. And my oratory skills, I've always had a strength there. And so I just found, and that with the excitement, I think criminal law is very exciting. And also, I think because so many of my clients initially and now come from a really challenging background, whether that is broken family, have experienced all different kinds of abuse, have suffered with poverty, and they often have so many different challenges, including mental health challenges, addiction. I've always been a champion for the underdog ever since I was a kid. And so I just think my personality and my strengths really suited me for criminal practice. And so I was working for this individual for about a year and a half. And I just found some of the personality characteristics of that person and myself weren't really gelling well. So I decided after literally, I think maybe 2.5 years of being called to the bar to start my own practice. And so I did. A lot of the clients came with me, much to the person I worked for's chagrin. But given that it was a small town, I became well known very quickly, and my take no prisoners mentality also became very well known. And so then I started in a very tiny office. I had a full time assistant, and I literally had this tiny shoebox of an office with literally almost no reception area. And my office was all self-contained, but it was all glassed in. So I really had no privacy at any time, but it was all I could afford at the time. Anyways, and then from there, my practice just grew and grew and grew to the point now. And for a number of years, I've had the largest criminal defense practice in St. Thomas. And historically, one of the biggest practices in London as well. So that's where I am now.
That's really very nice. And I didn't know that you started in family law. So it's nice
Yes,
to
I
see
did.
that you started in an area that wasn't criminal, and you then discovered criminal law and you loved it. And I mean, one thing that you mentioned that is really so true about criminal law is that once you do it, you cannot not fall in love with this area of practice. And it's nice to see that you still have that passion, right, for it, Kelly? Like it doesn't
Yes,
go away.
definitely. I mean, I went through a period of time where I really struggled. Um, I'm just gonna be straightforward. I was
Yeah.
diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. However, it turned out that that was actually caused by a workout supplement I was taking, and I didn't realize one of the side effects was that it could cause anxiety. So for a few years when I was taking the supplement, I was struggling with anxiety, and I went to a doctor and I was diagnosed, and I had to take some time off from trials, and I was on medication. And then my partner, when researching, the stuff I was using for workouts, said, "Did you know one of the side effects is that it can cause anxiety?" And I said, "I had no idea." So I stopped taking this, and literally the anxiety went away. But the point I'm making is that during that period of time when I was struggling with anxiety, and the anxiety was real, even though it was caused by this workout supplement, it was genuinely real. I got to the point where I actually hated working and
Mhm.
was thinking of other ways to earn a living. Like that's how bad the anxiety became for me. So when I discovered that it wasn't actually organic, meaning that it wasn't, coming from within my own organic makeup, but that it was because of the supplement, when I stopped it and it went away, it was like such a renewal for me in terms of my love and passion for criminal defense. So I almost feel like I'm back in my early days where you're always very excited and you're always out there, leading the charge. I actually feel like that again because I went through a couple of years just feeling so horrible about the anxiety and how that contributed to the way I was able to deal with things. It never got to the point where I was like not serving my clients properly, but it got to the point where I just hated
What you
working
were doing. Yeah.
and which was so upsetting for me because I loved the law, just love it. But anyways, that is now all corrected, and I'm back to the I just love criminal defense work. So
Well, okay, but I want to actually dwell a bit on that because it is a very important point that you're raising. And I think all practicing criminal defense lawyers, we do go through this stage. Now, in your case, it was due to anxiety caused by a workout supplement. But for many of us, we do go through this phase where we kind of have this hate towards the profession, but it's not caused because of, it's not due to this supplement. It's just the frustration of the practice of law. And I think, unfortunately, for a lot of people, it's what's eventually leading them to quit practicing criminal defense. And so, what is your take on that? Like, when the reason is not, like in your case, you're lucky because you
yes.
were able to find the source, and yeah, once you stopped, I think, taking that supplement, things got better and the anxiety went away. But for other people, we do get that anxiety, and it's not caused by a supplement. um how, like, what do you think a lawyer, especially new ones, should do and not get discouraged and quit the practice of criminal law?
Well, I think there's a number of things that are important to help cope with that feeling, regardless of what is causing it. First of all, the one thing I regret about early on in my practice is not taking enough time for myself and for my young children. And that's because when you're building a practice, you have to just work, 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 work. And being in a smaller jurisdiction and becoming well known quite quickly, I was getting so much work. But I think it's very important to take time for yourself, no matter what. And I think it's also important to be able to say no. So, no to being forced to double or triple or quadruple book yourself, which is now going to be a problem going forward.
Yeah.
Being able to say no if you have a day off, which is very difficult to do early in your practice, but that's a day that you have off and you need to protect that. I also think it's very important that you have a hobby or some activity that is just about you that helps you. So for me, for example, it's working out. So during university, I was a fitness instructor, which is part of how I supplemented or made an income. And then I've just maintained my fitness. And so that is very, very important to me. And so I have carved out times during the day when this is when I go. And, next to, the sky falling in or me being really sick, I do not give that up for anything
Yeah.
because for me, not only is that my time, but it's also a significant stress reliever for me. Some people enjoy wine at night, and that's great. Like, I've never been a big wine drinker. Now, champagne, that's another story. But um, but and some people, do other things that they find really helpful. For me, it's always been working out because it's a
Yeah.
natural way to release positive endorphins, which helps your mental health automatically. It's a great way to relieve stress. So I do think it's very important to be able to say no, also to carve out time for yourself, and also to have an activity outside of law that is you find fulfilling that can really assist you. And I also find it's really important to take vacation time. That's one thing I've always been quite good at when I was able to start affording it is to take vacation time. And I mean like going away because I find if it's a staycation, I'm
Yeah.
more inclined to answer the phone all the time and return all the emails from my staff. So now when I go on vacation, I say to them, nobody call me or email me unless the office is on fire. And they know
Yeah.
now that that time is just for me. And literally, unless it's like a major emergency, I don't want to hear from anyone. And it's very difficult as a criminal defense lawyer to do that because, first of all, when clients get arrested, they have the immediate right to speak with their counsel. And so I will take phone calls. But other than taking a phone call because someone's been arrested, I will just, when I'm on vacation now, that's it. And I used to take my laptop and work all the time and return phone calls to the office and return emails. But now when I'm on vacation, other than someone being arrested, that's it. And I think that's very important because you do burn out very easily. It is very emotional. I think it's very emotionally heavy work. Even if you're able to separate that from the emotional aspect of it from the law aspect, I think it's very emotionally charged work and you need to be constantly being able to recharge yourself. And so I think if you don't put yourself first, you can't be the best you, whether that means as a lawyer, as a family member, as a parent, as a friend, as whatever. Like it is very important to put yourself first, even in this very demanding job. And I didn't learn that soon enough in my practice, but now I've learned that and I do put myself first. And I'm still able to have a really fulsome, very busy practice, but I just have boundaries now. And
Yeah.
I think that's really important to establish early on in your career, even though it's not easy to do.
And how long did it take you, Kelly, to establish that system where there are some things that outside of the law, like working out, that you will do and you will not sacrifice that? Like, how many years into practice did you, or was it early on?
Oh, no, it definitely wasn't the first 10 years. It wasn't. Like,
Okay.
I didn't start doing that till I mean, I've in February, I'll be 26 years since I've been called to the bar, and definitely the first 10 years, I didn't follow any of that advice I just gave.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing in hindsight I wish that I had done was set more parameters or boundaries early on in my practice because I think you can still maintain a very productive practice and you can still do a lot of things, but boundaries are
Yeah.
important.
And I totally agree with you on the workout point because this is something that is also very, close to my heart. And I've been doing this since day one. And I totally understand. Like, if I don't work out, I just can't be productive during the day because I'm just so angry the whole time
Yes.
and I want to
Yeah.
kill someone.
I can relate. And it doesn't have to be working out. I mean, I know my friend Sid Freeman, Sid does
Horseback
horseback
riding.
riding. She's got a
Yeah.
horse. She's into horses. Some people run marathons, and it doesn't
Or
even
play an
necessarily have to be,
instrument. Yeah.
or play an instrument, or you're singing a choir, just something that is just for you that nobody else, that you don't do for anyone else but yourself.
Yeah. And because mental health is a problem that lawyers struggle with in this profession. Now, I
Yeah.
want to get to a point that's kind of similar to what we're talking about here, but it's more specific, and that's the practice of law when it comes to female defense lawyers. And the reason why I want to talk to you about this, Kelly, is because I know that you've been very involved in issues related to women. You were on the CLA Women's Committee, and even though you're not on the committee right now, but I know you're still very much, like following what's going on and very much interested in this subject. So this is something that we are seeing right now, that a lot of female criminal defense lawyers, unfortunately, are leaving the practice after just a few years of practice. I mean, they don't even stay for as long as 10 years. Within, like year 2 or 3, they start leaving. And it's very sad, especially when it's your friends that you see are leaving. What is your take on what's going on, and what are some of the solutions that you think could help in this situation?
Well, I think part of it is some of the younger female lawyers may want to have families, and it becomes a situation where it can be perceived as being too challenging, or not as flexible in terms of maintaining a practice and having children. And I understand that, because I was a single mom. When I started my practice, I had two children who are only 18 months apart. I've always been a sole support parent. So yes, it is very, very challenging. But I think it comes back to one thing is putting parameters on what you're prepared to say yes to. And when you have to leave because you have to pick up your child, don't feel guilty about doing that, first of all. I also think that for women, it's very important to not be afraid to speak up, especially if a judge is being difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, some judges whom I really, really like and get along famously with, I've heard some things about them, and they're male judges, in terms of how they've addressed some of my younger colleagues, which surprises me because I've not had that experience. But unfortunately, early in my career, I did have that experience with other male judges. So one of the things I think is not to be afraid to speak up. If you can't attend something at a certain time because you have another commitment, you need to say so. I also think it's important for women to have a really good sense of how to be a good business person, because I like to think that in addition to being what I think is a very good lawyer, I'm a very, very good business person. So I think it would be helpful if there was more information for our younger colleagues on how to run a really successful business, because being a good lawyer doesn't mean you're a good businesswoman. And just like being a good businesswoman doesn't mean you're a good lawyer. The two things are very different. And I do think it's important to understand how to run a business. And that's something I've been blessed with. I've run a very successful business, and I've always been sort of business minded since as long
But
as I can
but
remember. So I
on
think that's
that
part of it.
though, but on that though, Kelly, because it's something that is actually very important, especially when you're on your own or in a small firm. You have to manage the business. But how did you acquire these skills? Because as you know, nobody teaches
No.
us how to do that in university. So where did you learn? Like, is it innate? Like, do you just have a natural talent for business? Or is it something that you've learned? And I've also noticed that a lot of lawyers in London, Ontario, are very strong in their business and in, like running a practice. I mean, Cassandra
Mhm.
DeMello is a
Yes.
friend, and she's running a very successful practice. So where did you acquire these skills?
Well, I do think a lot of it was just something I was blessed with. Having said that, I've also had really good support staff. So, for example, my office manager, who is also a paralegal, has a university degree in business, and he's worked in business most of his life because his father owned a big company and he grew up working in that. And we've been working together for 16 years. So I had the benefit of my right hand person being very business savvy. And so together
Mhm.
we put this is long before you had Clio and,
Yeah.
all these other online programs. Before any of that was available, we created our own processes and procedures and put them in place. And actually, we helped other younger lawyers when they set up. So Chris Owagbo, who's now a judge, who worked for the Crown in London for a while and then started his own practice, when he came out on his own, he reached out to myself and my office manager, Mr. Halbuni, about how did we set things up. And we actually showed him and gave him the procedures and practices that we'd set up within our firm. And again, these were all self-created. We didn't have the benefit of all these programs. Now, I think lawyers can have the benefit of these online programs, which I'll just put as an aside. My office is in the process of looking into switching over to more online things like Clio, for example. So I think if you don't naturally have that, I think women should just reach out to the senior female lawyers and ask them, or we should offer more practical business acumen for starting your own practice because it's not easy. And I mean, I know some really great lawyers who aren't that great at business, and then their billings pile up, pile up, pile up. One thing that I also found is that I do all of my own legal aid online billing. I don't delegate that to somebody else. So all the block fees billings, I do that myself. And the other thing is, for example, once a matter is finished, I bill it out immediately. Like I don't have like every Wednesday for 3 hours is billing day. As soon as the matter's finished, I bill it out because you need to constantly have that income stream in order to keep going and so that you don't worry. So for me doing my own billings, I know exactly how much I'm getting in and when it's coming in, and I make sure it's done. So that's just one example of something that I've always done that I found extremely helpful. Even now, when I'm so busy, I still like to do all my own online legal aid billing. But I think for younger lawyers, I think we need to have information sessions about what you can do and how to do that. And you, quite honestly, could take an online business course, right? Like how to start your own business. Because
Yeah.
although we have specific practices in criminal law, things we have to do, running a business is pretty much a similar thread no matter what kind of business you have, right? Like you have to have output, you have to be able to pay your bills, you need to advertise, you need to have organization. Those things don't really change depending on what business you're in. So taking a how to start your own business course, I think is probably something that would be very helpful.
So that's definitely a very important point. It's once, as a lawyer, you learn how to become a better business person, that will definitely help because it will help you manage your practice better and you can have more clients and you're more in control
Yes.
running your business. But then there is also another problem that I think we're seeing more of when it comes to the practice of criminal law for female criminal defense lawyers. I just feel like sometimes the treatment that females get in court is a little bit different. I mean, judges uh, it seems to be easier for them to yell at a female criminal defense lawyer. And when you're new, it's really very embarrassing, especially that, as a defense lawyer, you have a client who's watching and they don't know that the judge is, a grumpy person sometimes
Right.
or just having a bad day. They just think that, oh, this is because the lawyer sucks. And so
Mhm.
it is really very difficult. And I mean, you did mention that you were surprised to hear that some judges were yelling at some junior lawyers because you didn't have that experience. But I mean, I can say that for younger lawyers and new lawyers, they get yelled at a lot more than other lawyers, and especially if they are female. So, what is your take on that? Like, how can that change, though? How can the message be brought to
Right. Well, my position has always been to speak out. I mean, I'm not known to be quiet when someone is saying something I don't like or I don't agree with, even a judge. Um, I have stood up for myself, and I appreciate that that's not always necessarily easy. And I can't say that I've done that every time. Sometimes I've just sort of taken it on the chin, but I've called them out. So, and I think especially now, we need to say the way I'm sorry, Your Honor, but the way you're speaking to me is making me feel bullied, if that's how you're feeling, because you say that on the record, and that'll shut them down immediately. Or, Your Honor, I know that you're raising your voice at me right now, and it's making me feel very uncomfortable. I think we need to put those things on the record. I know other of my more senior, like colleagues, um, don't necessarily agree with that. But I think you need to, because let's say, for example, you were in the private business sector and someone in a position of authority, a man, was yelling at you, raising their voice, being condescending, you could just march right over to HR and say, hey, or, if you have an immediate supervisor, hey, this man was speaking to me in this fashion, and this is how it made me feel, and it's really not appropriate. And in addition to that, I feel like it's in part because I'm a woman. And that would be nipped in the bud in the private sector.
Yeah.
So the fact that someone sits on a bench and wears a sash doesn't give them the right to bully you or to raise their voice at you or to be insulting or to be short tempered. Now, we all have bad days. And I know when I'm not having a great day, I'm the first one to be snarky, but I'm also one who would immediately acknowledge that and apologize. But we don't have to tolerate that just because someone sits on a bench. We all have law degrees. And as a woman, I think it's okay to be more sensitive to that because you don't know if it's because you're a woman that that's happening to you or if it's because you're junior counsel. But either way, it's not acceptable. And the problem is that if we don't speak up, this will continue and it's not okay. Like it's not okay in a courtroom for a judge to yell at you. That's completely unacceptable.
No, and quite frankly, I find like especially for a judge who is someone who is judging a case, you want that person to be calm, to be in control of their emotions. And when you see them lose control, it's scary. It's scary for clients as well because they're like, well, I don't want to be judged by that person who's angry and who has no control of their emotions and who get bothered by the slightest thing. So
Yeah, I do
I
think we
thought,
need to speak up. And
yeah.
keep in mind, like if everything's recorded, so if you speak up, that's going to be on the record. And if you need to go back to the record at some point, whatever the reason, you have spoken up and it's on the record. And an audio will capture the tone of the judge's voice. And I think part of the problem is that we think that all this deference is due to the bench, and it is to an extent, absolutely, but not when it comes to being mistreated in terms of words or tone or verbiage. It's not acceptable. You don't have to tolerate it and you need to speak up and say, the way you're speaking to me right now is making me really uncomfortable. Or I can hear that you're really angry and your voice is raised, and I'm just not feeling that this is the best time for us to continue, perhaps a recess. But I think we need to put it on the record because my experience with a lot of male judges who are now retired or close to retiring is that they could just be bullies and be nasty to people and nothing ever happened. And if our profession is all about civility and presenting to the public, you know, dispassion, and consideration and respect from the bench, then we as counsel do not have to tolerate that, and we shouldn't. Women, don't be afraid to speak up.
Yes. And also, Kelly, I wanted to ask you because you have built a very successful practice. I mean, you were a sole practitioner very early on in your career. After 2.5 years, you started your own practice and you became very successful in St. Thomas. But I'm guessing there was, it wasn't necessarily well perceived by other lawyers who were more senior and especially male lawyers, like you are like a threat. How do you deal with that? Because that's also another difficult thing that a
Yes.
female criminal defense lawyer has to deal with in the practice of law.
Yes, I did experience it early on. I can recall a couple of occasions in particular. One time it was a crown in St. Thomas, the head crown, who was being condescending to me. And this was not on the record, but the courtroom was full. So we had just taken a break, I think. And he was condescending to me. And I said, excuse me. I said, I don't know who you think you're talking to. I said, I have a law degree just like you do. And it is not okay to speak to me like that. So again, I think you need to speak up. I've always done that, sometimes to my own detriment. Um, and one time there was the lawyer that I worked with initially there, who I took a large number of clients with. Had he was so rude to me for years after that. And
Mhm.
now he had his own issues, but just so mean and rude and horrible to me. And I would just stand up for myself. I would just stand up for myself because my experience is that people who are bullies, if you stand up to them, then they back off. So I think we simply need, just like we advocate for our clients,
Yeah.
and we're not afraid to speak up about defenses or to put forward, submissions that aren't necessarily popular. We need to do that for ourselves. So whether it's a judge, a crown, whether it's a colleague, you just need to speak up. And now I don't put up with nonsense. Well, I haven't for a long, long time. Like I've told judges off in a polite way, in open
Yeah.
court on the record. And I've stood up for my clients when judges are screaming and yelling at them. I've said that it's not okay to speak like that to my client. You just need to speak out. That's the best advice I can give. Say something. Don't be afraid to say something. Don't be afraid to say something. You must be your own advocate, right? You must be your own advocate, your own champion. So don't be afraid, because we do not deserve, and nor should we think it is expected that as a woman we can be spoken to like that by anyone, because it's not acceptable. So say something. Fire back if you have to, but don't be quiet. That's the worst thing, I think, is to be quiet.
Yeah, and I honestly like the point that you made just now, that sometimes like we have to actually defend our own rights, because I feel that many defense lawyers, we are really good at defending our clients' rights, but that comes at the expense of our own rights, our own health. And I think that's also a problem that we have, and I don't know why. Like that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's partly because, and I'm hopeful it's not as much for, my younger colleagues, but women have always been raised, instead of being like a powerful little girl or a smart little girl or an intelligent little girl, it's like you're a good girl, right?
Mhm.
And I have a granddaughter who's 18 months, and so I don't tell her that she's good. I say, "Oh, you're so smart. Oh, you're so funny. Oh, you did that. I'm so proud of you." I don't like to use the word "you're a good little girl," because unfortunately, there's still this preconceived notion in a lot of people, not everybody, that, little girls have to be good, and where we grow up being taught to be good and to be kind and to be respectful and thoughtful. And those are all great things, don't get me wrong, but we don't have to grow up feeling like we have to be good. We have to be strong and fearless and passionate and independent and self-loving. Those are the things we need to teach
Yeah.
young girls, and those are the things we need to remind ourselves about. Like, we need to be fearless and passionate, and we're intelligent, and we're articulate, and we are kind. And nothing wrong with being kind, because I think we have to be kind to do this job, but we don't have to be good to, meaning like, oh, I'm like, I can't say that, I'm sorry. Be your own advocate.
Yeah.
Stand up for yourself. And you don't have to be good, you have to be fearless. And that's important, right? Like, no good girl stuff. You be a fearless, be a warrior, right? That's what we need to remind ourselves.
Yeah, no, I really like that, be your own advocate, because I think like we tend to forget about that sometimes. Like, we're
Yes.
advocating for everyone and everything except for ourselves. And
Yep.
that's really a very important thing that we need to mention. So I am mindful of the time, Kelly, but honestly, I can go on for hours with you, because you have an amazing personality and
We
you're
almost
such
need a
a
2.0.
yeah. We'll have another one for sure.
That's right.
But I'm honestly very happy that we had this interview, and it's always very nice to connect with you. I haven't seen you in person in a while, though. I
I
hope that we
know.
can meet soon.
I hope so
Um,
too.
yes, but we are always in touch through social media.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy that you shared with us a little bit about your practice and what you've been doing. I know how amazing you are, but I'm very happy that,
Thanks,
you know,
Maya.
everyone gets to see you. So
Thank
I
you.
hope we'll get you as a guest again, and maybe
Thanks.
with for some other programs for Wicked as well, some CPD
That would
programs.
be wonderful. And I'll
Mhm.
just say that if anybody who happens to watch this, wants to reach out to me, I would not hesitate at all to speak with someone, or to, write them back. So if they want to reach out to you, and you've got my email, by all means, you can pass that along to anybody that has any questions about, what I've said, or wants to pick my brain as senior counsel.
And I can say that, I mean, this, you are true to your word, because I mean, I'm an example of someone who met you very early on in my career, and you were in touch with me, and you were always, checking on me. So I know from experience that you are really a very helpful, like, you always like to help and to give advice to younger counsel. So I would encourage everyone who's watching to actually reach out to Kelly. Thank you so much, Kelly, for always
Thanks.
being so generous and so nice.
Have
And
an awesome day.
you as well.
We'll
Thank
talk
you so
soon.
much.
Okay.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye.